Hello.
Hello, that was unfortunately a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
I wasn't sure if I should I wasn't sure if you had done a TikTok live before, so I was like, I don't know how help you might need or
Unfortunately, no, this is my first time, but I mean, happy that this is my first time, so no, it's all good.
terrific, awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you are taking the time to talk to me today. For anybody who doesn't know, we're talking with Stephanie Williams, who is the writer of Nubia the Amazons, the upcoming Nubia Coronation Special, and the upcoming miniseries Nubia Queen of the Amazons. Thank you so much for being here tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Despite my shirt, I am pretty all right.
Well, it's like external and internal, right? External,
Yes,
great.
yes,
Internal, always tired. I get it. I
yes.
have a 3 month old, so I know how you feel
Oh,
on that front.
yeah. And last week, my son had spring break, so I think I am still recovering and probably will be recovering for like 2 more weeks.
Now, I feel like I have to ask this question because I've always wondered: is it like the coolest thing in the world for him that his mom writes comic books? Because if that was my parents, I'd be just never shutting up about it.
So actually, I think it is. We just finished watching Steven Universe all the way through. So
Nice.
from beginning all the way to future, and he looked at me. He was like, "Mom, I got a really great idea." And I'm like, "What is that?" He's like, "You should write a Steven Universe comic." And I'm like, they already have them. I appreciate it, but they definitely already have them. I do appreciate your frame of thought, but so far he really has been digging it. It's really nice when he comes into like the office or whatever. It's like, hey, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, I'm working on this thing. Come look at this
That's
art.
awesome. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Wow, that's great. I love that. I've always wondered what it would be like for kids that with of parents of comic book creators and stuff. That's super cool. Well, I feel like this is a perfect segue into the question I always like to start with people, which is, what is it that first got you into comic books? Like, what is your comic book origin story? It's a big
So,
question.
so for me, it was an arcade game. So once upon a time ago, when we used to go to the laundromat when our washer and dryer wasn't working, there was Ninja Turtles, Turtle in Time, and then there was also I think it was X-Men versus Capcom,
Yeah,
whatever
sure.
one where Storm is like repeatedly saying Typhoon. That's the
I think
one,
that's
right?
the one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember playing that a lot, and then that going to watching the X-Men animated series, and then from there, I was like, oh, okay, like this is pretty cool. And then Dollar Tree, once upon a time ago, used to sell like really cool stuff, and you could find like X-Men books that were like, I think the villains and also the heroes. I remember picking that up and then finding comics, going to the thrift store with my grandmother. So once upon a time ago, before Goodwill and thrifting really became the thing that it is now, like you just go to the thrift
Sure,
store and you
sure.
would find stuff like that. And it was a Avengers, West Coast Avengers book that I had found, and I think it was like in the middle of the saga between Black Knight, Cersei, and Crystal, right?
Is that the era where they're all
And
wearing like leather jackets and stuff?
yes, that's the one that they got the bombers and all of that. And I remember reading that and thinking, wow, this is like just as soapy as the soap operas that my mom and my grandmother loved, but they just have, they're just superheroes. So
Sure.
that is the first time I made the connection with that this was something that I was really going to love. And then Archie became very dominant very
Sure.
quickly because one, Archie Digests were really easy to get. You can get them at the grocery store because you can also get comics at the grocery store a long time ago too,
Sure.
right? But the Archie Digests were so much easier for me to sneak into the cart. So I know at one point my mom was like, I know you're putting that behind the cereal boxes. I can't. It's $3.99. It's fine. Just go ahead and put it. And she, if anything, she just always encouraged reading. So, for the simple fact that that was something that I was just like, she knew I was a bookworm, so
Sure.
she heavily supported that. So that's my comic origin from arcade games, Storm repeatedly saying Typhoon to Archie. And then getting into like a lot more Marvel DC. I remember Batman with the very long ears. I remember seeing
Sure.
that and thinking, oh, that looks pretty cool, and picking it up. So I think that's my origin.
Well, now that you say that, it kind of just like I connected some dots in my brain now because I first became aware of you from Twitter, from like your video edits and from
Mm-hmm.
the But What If Though comics that you
Yeah.
post on there. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? The But What If Though comics are kind of like if you took the Archie sensibilities and mashed them
Yes.
into Marvel DC. Was that conscious in your mind when you were doing that, or was that just sort of your
I think it
comic
was a
DNA
sub.
coming together?
I think it was just a subconscious thing. A lot of times I'll look back at some stuff and I'm like, wait, how did I even pull that? Because some stuff that I do, so church, I am free of it now, but a lot of Sundays spent in church, and I noticed that sometimes I'll pull that into some of the X-Men stuff. So like for the
Sure.
Phoenix Force, for the longest I was calling it the Cosmic Holy Ghost, just the way that I saw it.
I mean, when you
And
think about it, that is kind of what it
I
is.
mean, on the third day, Jean Grey did rise, and then fell again. So, so I just feel like
Yeah.
all of the stuff that I either or like my experiences growing up subconsciously always ends up leaking into what I'm working on.
Right.
Even the main stuff, like even in Nubia and the Amazon, some of that stuff kind of leaked in because I tried to fit in one of the characters saying sweet baby black Jesus or something to the extent. And they're like, we can't say Jesus. I'm like, okay, fine. Sweet sugar grits it is. So whenever I'm writing, stuff just kind of like seeps in and I don't realize it until after the fact. I'm like, oh, you got me. I'm not beating those allegations.
Sure. Well, and when I was thinking about your career at this point, it's been very interesting seeing you go from those one page gag comics to full blown 22 issue monthly comics. And I was curious on a craft level, was it a big shift for you to go from one page stories to full comics, or was it? Do you have a different process for each one?
So I want to say that it was a bit of a shift. And to be quite frank with you, after finishing like writing issue 6 of Nubia and the Amazons and looking back on it, I'm like, how the hell did I pull that off? Because I mean, I didn't think that it was possible, but from what I've been told, that it's much harder to write a one-page thing and try to land a joke by the final panel versus getting breathing room to really tell a story.
Right.
So, I guess in that way, if anything, maybe I had a head start and better in pacing because I was like, oh wait, I got room. Like I don't have to like squeeze everything into one page. So
Right.
the process, if anything, has just it's more so, Stephanie, you can breathe. Like you got time to land the thing. You don't have to fit it into 1 or 2 pages. So I'm actually kind of happy that that was my start
Right.
versus trying to go from big grand story telling from just one pager. So I did myself a service by doing that. Also, it's cheaper. It is expensive getting comics made because
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
pay artists exactly what they're worth, and art takes a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately I am not rich, so I cannot pay for a full 10 pages by myself, but I can afford a page or two.
Sure. Sure.
So that was another reason why the one pagers were my go-to because it was something that I could afford.
Right. Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head though, where you were like, many people find it more challenging because I always had so much respect for people who do one pagers or strips because you have to have set up, execution,
Yeah.
punchline in such a brief amount of space. But when you got this opportunity to write Nubia, I was curious going into it, what was your experience with the character? Because this is a character who fans love and have been wanting to see her get a spotlight like this for so long. What was your familiarity with her going in? Like what was your prior knowledge and experience with the character?
So funny enough, my experience with her was a lot more than I originally thought.
Ooh.
So prior to like really writing about comics and then actually writing comics, I did a podcast called Misty Knight's Uninformed Afro where we cover black black superheroines and characters in comics and like their
Mhm.
history. So Nubia was someone that we covered, and I remember like writing out the podcast episode, and it's like, well, damn, there isn't really much to write here because she doesn't
Yeah.
have too much, right? There is that introduction and what is it, Wonder Woman 204 through 206, then like a retroactive thing where she appears in Super Friends
Right.
25, and then you have the appearance in Supergirl 9 where she's unconscious the whole time. And then she pops up again in Wonder Woman in, like, what is it, the late 90s, early 2000s. And then some stuff here and there. She popped up in Grant Morrison's thing, and just kind of there.
Right.
So
Right.
it was both. I don't know. It was something that felt. I was both excited and terrified at the same time because Nubia has such a fan base, which tells me that for all of this time, her fans have been creating their own stories for her in between the panels. So, like, how do you go up against someone else's imagination? Hell, how do you go up against your own imagination and make it fit into the DC world? So, I was both excited and terrified at the same time because we
Sure.
were also tasked with retconning her origin story, which is
Right.
a big ask because I know that a lot of people are married to the idea of her being, this agent of Mars and being sequestered away on the floating island and coming from a different people than the Amazon and kind of bulldozing her way onto the island. With respect, I did love that idea of her, so wanted to infuse that into her origin. So by her being champion of Doom's Doorway for so long, to me, like, that was the strength and, like, the gumption that you've seen in her. But, like, what else is there? Like, we know that Nubia is strong. We know that Nubia can do all these things, but what makes Nubia tick? Like, what is that transition from being in the basement, basically in a basement job all this time, to coming up above ground, and now you have all this FaceTime with people. You're
Sure.
queen. That's a hell of a jump. And if anything, I felt some similarities because for me to go from a 2-page story in Marvel Voices Legacy about Monica Rambeau to a full-blown comic series, that's a hell of a jump.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you were working with Vita Ayala on this project,
Oh
and I
my
was
God,
curious.
Vita is
They're the best.
Vita's
They're great.
amazing. Yes, they are phenomenal. And from jump, the very day that Vita asked me if I would be interested in something like this, I was like, I mean, I guess sure. I don't know, like, I didn't connect the dots that it was gonna be this thing. Because
Sure.
again,
Sure.
I'm thinking like, okay, well, like, I've done like my own webcomic thing, and I've written like this
Right.
one story for Marvel, 2 pages, a whole series, whatever. Sure. So when I did I think it was Wonder Woman Black and Gold 2.
Mm-hmm.
I had barely turned in the draft for that, and I was already being so the editor was like, yeah, so, like, you and Vita should talk. And I'm thinking it's about the Wonder Woman Black and Gold story. So for like a whole hour, Vita and I are having two different conversations. Vita is talking about the Nubia Amazon series. I'm talking about this Wonder Woman Black and Gold story because I had Nubia in it. And I think maybe 60 minutes later, Vita was like, okay, yeah, like, that's great, but, like, let's talk about the Nubian Amazon series. Like, what do you want to do with that? I'm like, wait, what? So, and then that felt very on brand for me. But early on, Vita was like, I'm here in name. We will plot this story out, but this is very much your ship. For you to steer, and I'm here to lend support in any way that I can, and I am forever thankful for that because to have that type of support in your first go at something like this, and also to be able to be mentored by a writer as prolific and amazing as Vita, I
Ooh. Uh-oh.
a time limit. I forgot to take that off. My screen time limit. But anyway,
You're good.
I
I
was
was like,
saying
uh-oh, what
that
happened there?
also the editor, Brittany, is amazing as well. So I don't know, like, I just had a very fortunate experience with this first go with Nubia and the Amazons, and again, looking at the 6 issues, I'm like, I don't even know how I did any of that, but I did it.
Well, I mean, speaking for myself, you nailed it. Like, I
Thank
adored
you.
every issue of this. It's phenomenal. And you kind of answered this question, but I was curious how the the writing process working with Vita. It sounds like that they kind of shepherd you, were a mentor figure,
Yeah.
and then you kind of went along from there and actually sat down and wrote the scripts, or
Yeah, sat down and wrote the scripts. So we did like a very overarching outline for the story. And then it was like, issue one, I scripted that. That first script is horrendous. When I look back on it, I was like, oh my God, like what? Why would you write any of that? Like, what is this? And then from there, just kind of progressing and growing. I want to say like by issue three, I was like, if this was a learning how to ride a bike situation,
sure,
Vita had softly let go of the bike, and next thing I knew, I was like riding it by myself. And then
right?
by the time I got to issue, I want to say 4 and 5, I was down the street, and Vita was just like waving, saying, "Hey, you're doing a really
Amazing.
great job." Yeah.
And I think that's such a, I mean, to go on a side tangent for a quick second, I think that's something I would love to see more of in comics. More,
Yes.
veteran, seasoned writers giving the reins over to more, I don't want to say
Yeah.
inexperienced. That's not the right word, but
No, but I
new
get what you mean,
writers.
though.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I
because I would love to do that for someone one day. I
sure.
hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I ask the next question, Karama Horn is in my chat right now saying Stephanie, and then sent a bunch of likes to you. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave her a shout
Hey.
out. Well, one of the things that I think I've appreciated so much about you as a writer is you are someone who's into the research. Like I always see on
Oh my
Twitter,
God, yes.
I always see on Twitter you're talking about like books that you're looking up. Like you dive deep into it, and for Wonder Woman and Nubia and these Amazon mythos, you're kind of in an interesting position where you have both comics and mythology that you can dive into. And I was curious, what was your research process like for this particular story? Did you focus on the comics? Did you go into myth too? What was your research focus like?
A little bit of everything. So, Greek mythology is something that, of course, I've been aware of and been like a casual fan of. I can't like Hercules, all of that. Tale of the Odyssey, all of those things, but it wasn't something that I felt like I wasn't going on Jeopardy and winning anything if they asked any questions, right? I probably
Sure,
get one
sure.
or two right. So good friend of mine, Aaron Reese, is a huge Greek mythology
Okay.
person. I was very thankful. I was able to reach out to him and I said, hey, if you wanted to suggest like some books for me to kind of get into the Greek mythos, what would you suggest? And he suggested Madeline Miller's Circe.
Hmm.
So Audible, after having my son, I'm like, reading is, if it's not like a romance novel, it's me reading, it's not happening. But listening has been great. So I got the Audible for that, and I think I listened to it within like 3 or 4 days, and I was like, holy shit, like this is great.
Right, yeah.
So from there, then I kind of got into like the Wonder Woman stuff, which I was already familiar with because like I've read Wonder Woman comics. But then I was like, I want to go to a very specific area though, because the task here is to not only reintroduce Nubia, but also reintroduce these Amazons so that by the time we get to Trial of the Amazons, you actually care because you know who they are.
Sure.
So I went to George Perez's run because to me that always felt like, I don't know, like the definitive, this is how Themyscira is, this is how things operate. It was very political at times, and I felt like that was a great launching point. And also the Cavern of Souls was introduced there, which we
Right.
have the Well of Souls now, but that was a lot. I spent a lot of time there, and then going into the Greg Rucka stuff, and I was like, oh wait, Medusa. So, because of Circe, Madeline Miller Circe, my whole thing is I want women to be the focus of this. And it's like, duh, they're on Themyscira. Why wouldn't they be? But I'm like, no, I want women to be the sole focus of this. The good, the bad, the evil, the neutral, all of that. What does that look like? Because for me, like Themyscira was always an interesting place because these women have been tasked to be essentially jailers for Doom's Doorway. Like they're the keepers
Right.
of that. So you have a paradise that is like the like the storefront for a security max jail for
Right.
all of these like mythical beasts and all this other stuff. And I thought that very interesting because Medusa, who was cursed by essentially Athena, the same goddess who blessed, was part of the blessing of these other
Right.
Amazons. So then, like, all right, well, how does that work? How
Right.
do and she was also someone who befell a very tragic situation in the same way that these Amazons came on to Themyscira. So why is she the one that is stuck behind Doom's doorway and everyone else is getting to thrive and have another shot at life? So that was the main reason why that villain. I'm not. Well, I don't even call her a villain, but that was the reason why Medusa was somebody who I wanted to focus on because I felt like, again, you know, the Nubia is strong.
Right.
I don't really need to show you that. Does it work for a badass moment? It absolutely does. But if we're trying to define who Nubia is and how she fits in the DCU and how she is not Diana 2.0, she is Nubia. And she's queen of the Amazons. There's a reason why Hippolyta picked her. So like really leaning into that. And I felt Medusa was someone who would bring all of those things out of her and really test her in ways that, you know, a Hydra wouldn't, because a Hydra,
Sure.
she's going to slay the Hydra in what, a page and a half? What do you learn from that? You just learn that Nubia is again a badass, but there needed to be more.
Well, and I think what you're also getting into there is the difference between Wonder Woman, who's a superhero, and Nubia, who is now a queen and a leader.
Yes.
And there's a difference between those two positions of power.
Exactly. Yes, there is. Because I don't know, it would have been nice. So at first I was like, well, maybe you know, Nubia should be the one that goes over to the Justice League to take Diana's place. However, like the tricky thing about mantles is that no one really remembers 2 or 3. They remember 1. Unless you're Miles Morales, then you're not really worried about Peter, right?
Right.
But
There
for
are rare
everyone
exceptions
else,
to that rule, but yeah.
there are rare exceptions. And the other thing about Nubia is because she hasn't had much of a history, you don't have much to go off of. So a lot of times, and not even on purpose, you are giving value to her through her proximity to Diana. And that's a problem because Nubia deserves more than that. And again, no slight to Diana, but just as much as Diana is able to stand on her own, you know who she is, Nubia deserves that too. So when really thinking about it, I'm like, actually, no, Nubia being queen of Themyscira is great because there are many different ways for her to rule that is different than Hippolyta. And no one's going down the street and saying, Hippolyta is the best queen that the Amazons have ever had. Like, you know, leadership changes. That's a little bit different for a mantle. So if anything, I thought that it was the perfect opportunity to really establish her and say, hey, like, this is who she is. So that from now on, when you think of Nubia, you aren't thinking Wonder Woman and her lasso. That's not hers. That's Diana's. If anything, that would be Donna Troy's. But you're saying, okay, Nubia. She is the queen. And she was also champion of Doom's doorway. Like she is her own person, and she doesn't have to. Her value does not depend on, you know, what you can remember of Diana because she's just a second coming of that. Again, like that's Donna Troy, if anybody.
And that's
Also, I love Donna Troy. Like, please don't eat me up. Like, I absolutely love Donna.
But I think you've also perfectly summarized why it's so important to do that because, like you said, Nubia is someone who has a lot of expectations built up in fans' minds, but in canon and text, there hasn't been a lot provided for her. So giving her that spotlight where she's not just taking on a mantle and doing superhero stuff establishes her identity far more strongly. So I think that was a great decision.
And also, it opened up, so for her to come from the Well of Souls, that opened up a wealth of storytelling opportunities to me because then, because of the way that the women come into the Well of Souls, her life prior to coming to the well.
Right.
And you all will be introduced to that in Nubia Coronation Special and also in the new run, the second miniseries, Nubia Queen of the Amazons. So that's even fun because there's just, it's limitless in all the things that we can do. Because again, like Nubia being, you know, twin to Diana, made of mud or just clay. It wasn't Fenty, so whatever it was, right? Um, that's great, but I don't know, the whole idea of her being kidnapped and taken by Mars and then put into isolation in the way that she was. Because I went back and I read those
Right.
issues several times. And I remember, I think it's in 205, where you get to see Nubia and her on the floating island and how isolating that feels, because you have the men that are fighting over her, and then she goes into her tent and she just feels lonely and she feels othered. So that was another thing. Like, I wanted to show, not only was it important to show like this community on Themyscira, but for Nubia to be as just as smart a part of it as any other Amazon.
Right.
Because that's important.
Right. I actually wanted to backtrack to your conversation about Medusa a minute ago, because one of the things I found so thematically rich in this story was that idea of restorative justice versus punitive justice.
Yes.
And I thought it was really bold of you to use Medusa, because in my mind, like, a top comic book moment is that Greg Rucka run where Diana like blinds herself to fight Medusa.
Yes.
And I thought it was really bold of you to actually take this character that's been portrayed as like evil purely, really look at the mythology of it and say, no, there's something more here. There's a tragedy to this character who doesn't deserve to just be portrayed as a monster. Did you find that came out through more the research, or was that theme of restorative versus punitive on your mind going into the series?
So it was on my mind going into the series a very long time ago, when I first learned of Medusa and just her mythology and her story. I was always like, look, why, why is this woman being punished in this way?
Sure.
And it's tricky because, her curse in a way is almost a gift for her, because she cannot be harmed anymore. She is inflicting the harm, which in itself gets very messy. It's the whole, hurt people type of situation. And that is why I kind of wanted to lean into, she wasn't more so a monster before she went in, but going in made her a monster.
Sure.
So just kind of thinking of things that way. And again, because she pretty much befell, and her story is tragic in the same way that the other women that are on Themyscira, who end up there is, then again, why is it that she is the one that is punished in the way that she is, and then the rest of these women have been, they've been gifted with another life? So kind of questioning that, and also questioning really, what does it mean to be an Amazon? And what are those qualifications? And it gets muddy. It's not clean, and that's scary storytelling, because you don't want to say anything that is just objectively just horrendous, but that was something that I felt like needed to be explored. And again, like, Medusa felt like the perfect character right there to do it. So coming in, Stephanie long ago, probably in 4th grade, was like, you know what? If I one day write something with Medusa, we're gonna do things a little bit differently. And thankfully, because she had already been in the DCU, it was right there.
Yeah. I loved that aspect of the story. I thought that was so interesting, and it fits so great with the idea of the Well of Souls being a place for women who were, wronged or violently hurt or killed in man's world to be reborn and have a paradise that they weren't given. Why doesn't Medusa get that? Because she logically, by those rules, should get that. And I thought that was a great piece of the mythology to add in.
Now, how things will go now that she is an Amazon, I have no idea. That's a whole cluster in itself, because
sure.
And the way that the gods are, and I think of them, I'm like, sure, Athena might have just said, hey, watch your back, Nubia, but there should be some, or could possibly be some repercussions for that. And again, just thinking storytelling wise, again, like, a wealth of things to be explored, because what is that reform, what does that restorative justice look like after the fact? And we already know that the Amazons can be sometimes xenophobic as hell. And like, they aren't a monolith. Ignore for that the time limit thing. I just ignored it for the day. So anyway, I've been trying to be good about screen time, as you can see, but
I can relate.
they're not a monolith. So some of them are going to be, okay about it. Others not so much. So like, what does that look like in the future? And then also, how does that impact Nubia? And
Sure.
as far as people and how they feel about, her decision making and all of that. And thankfully in Trial of the Amazons, we get to see that explored some more, and like how the other Amazons accept her. Because she rules very differently than Hippolyta. And clearly that's for a reason. But for someone to go from being, champion of Doom's doorway, like this glorified warden essentially, to queen,
Sure.
do you bring some of that with you? Is she thinking about things differently? So there was just so much to play with.
Speaking of things to like add to the character and things to play with, I had a great question here in the chat. Are
Yeah.
Nubia and Io official? I guess on Amazonian Facebook, are they official? And if so, will we see their backstory? I guess how they first met and whatnot.
So they are official. That is a relationship that kept me up at night because so here's the backstory to that I have not shared. So when I was thinking of like, whether or not to have Nubia in a romantic relationship or not, I thought no, she should. If she's been on Themyscira all this time, eventually maybe she would bud, something would bud. And I thought Io, because Io's a blacksmith, and if anything, the champion is probably seeing the blacksmith a lot, if no one else,
Sure.
because we need to get these weapons resharpened. Maybe Io has her testing out new stuff. And also because of Io's history and with Diana and like having these feelings that were never reciprocated, I thought, so we give Nubia a little something, but Io deserves a little something too. Someone who is going to appreciate her just as much as she appreciates them. So I don't know, story wise, it just felt like it made sense. But no, they are official. You will see a little bit of their backstory in DC Pride, the
Oh,
anthology
perfect.
out May 31st. So you'll see some of that. And yeah, I can't give too much away, but yes, there's more coming with Io. There's more coming with Bia. There is more coming with a lot of these characters that were introduced, and especially Bia. Because when I asked, actually, when both Vita and I asked about if we would be able to include Bia and just make it known that she is a Black trans woman, first off, editorial was not only supportive, but they said yes, absolutely do that. And I just thought it was a very beautiful thing to really introduce because of the Well of Souls. And it's just to say on a very divine level, like, yes, Bia is here. And also to make Bia an oracle, because in other cultures, trans people are held high in the way that they should be now. So to make her an oracle, to make her somebody who Nubia listens to, is just saying, hey, I might be saying on a fictional level that we should be listening to Black trans women, but here, like, we really should be doing that, listening to trans people in general. So I was just really happy that we were able to include Bia, and I'm happy that Bia is going to be around for a long time. And I just can't wait to see what someone else is able to do with this character now that she exists, because, I'm a huge X-Men fan, especially Claremont.
Sure.
So I am from the school of subtext, and subtext is great. It has its place. And especially when the Comics Code Authority was a thing, like, it was king, right? So to be able to say definitively out loud that trans women exist on Themyscira was huge. Because
Sure.
could we have left it to subtext? Sure, but there was no need to do that. So I didn't think of it as a risk or anything. I just thought of something that just naturally needed to happen. So I'm just happy that it did, and more Bia to come as well.
Awesome. I'm thrilled to hear that because I really enjoyed the little bits of her character we got to see. So I'm excited to see
Yeah.
I also had another question in the chat that I wanted to acknowledge as well, which was, I have a question. Where should I start if I want to know more about Nubia? I'm going to say it so you don't have to. You should read Stephanie's. You should definitely read Stephanie's series, Nubia and the Amazons, and then pick up the Coronation Special this summer. But that was actually a question I had, which was, were there any stories in your research about Nubia that really stood out to you or had an influence on the way that you wrote the character?
So funny enough, her first appearances.
Sure.
So that Wonder Woman 204, 205, and 206, because we don't get a lot of it, right? But
Right.
there is enough there where there are foundational pieces that I kind of took from and used. And actually, um, for the Coronation special and also the new mini series, you will see a lot of that influence and a lot of that just kind of a nod to that origin story in both of those books. Because I don't know, I mean, do objectively bad stories exist? Sure, but because I love just comics in general and just the research, because I love reading older comics in case that wasn't like a thing that anyone didn't know. I don't know why I love them because as a Black queer woman, there isn't much there for me. But even among just the lack of representation and the very problematic stuff, there are some really great stories. And I feel like for some stuff that didn't work then, works now, or
Sure.
that there are bits and pieces of a story that was a little undercooked, but now maybe we can bake it fully now, and maybe season it a little bit, and give it the flavor that it was missing. So, yeah, those first three issues of where she was introduced, again, like I've read them so much that I can probably repeat them verbatim.
Awesome. That's true. Was that is that a now? Forgive my ignorance here. Was
Yeah.
she Silver Age, Golden Age? Am I going too far back with her? I don't
No, you're not going
remember.
to. She is Silver Age.
Okay,
No, because this is the '70s, so
so Bronze Age.
maybe kind of bronzy type
Yeah.
of. Yeah, I think
Okay,
more bronze than anything. Yeah,
gotcha. Okay, yeah.
because you
I was like,
have
how far back
Storm.
did we go?
Because Storm comes, I think, a year or two after her. Please correct me
Oh,
if I'm
interesting.
wrong. I think, yeah. So Storm comes a year or two after her, and then you have Misty around that time too, a little bit
Sure.
after Monica. So like there was this really interesting pocket of time where you have these Black superheroines, like introduced, and like Nubia just fell to the wayside.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the another interesting thing that you guys did in this series was the use of text pages, where you kind of
Yes.
dive deep into mythology. And I don't know if it's because Vita was writing the book. I immediately was thinking of, of course, the Dawn of X stuff. I don't
So
know if.
funny enough, so actually that was me.
Oh, okay, no
So
way.
yeah, because I was like, Vita, do you think like, because of course like X-Men, my first love.
Sure.
So I was reading those books. But I was like, Vita, do you think we can include that? And Vita was like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, great, because I thought that that was a really great thing that Hickman like introduced, and like the rest
Sure.
of the X books went off with, because I'm like, okay, here's an interesting way to give some exposition that doesn't feel like exposition. Because
Right.
that's the
Right.
other thing I've been learning as far as writing is that sure you don't like exposition, but sometimes you gotta let people know what's going on. So how can you do that in a way that is interesting? And
Sure.
those text pages really allow for that. And then also because of like the old feel to them, and then Aletha's artwork on it, it just
Sure.
sends it.
Yeah, it feels appropriate for a ancient race to have these
Hmm.
texts and tomes where you can get this bit of world building. Like data pages would feel weird in like a Spider-Man comic, but
Of course.
here it feels like this feels aesthetically appropriate. What was it like for you to get these opportunities though to do this level of world building? I feel like the sort of Amazon mythos at DC have really been built out over the last year.
Yeah.
What was it like to get to put that piece of the puzzle in for Themyscira?
It was fun. Because again, like I love research. Before I was writing comics, I was a scientist. So
Oh wow,
this was like, yeah, like so this was like me kind of marrying those two things and saying,
sure,
okay, so let me fill in the gaps here. And also just kind of either new comic book fans or anyone who was kind of really new to the Wonder Woman mythos period, they hopefully didn't have to do a whole lot of work to kind of understand what was going on.
sure.
And it felt, I don't know, open and inviting. And so far, unless folks have been lying to me, they've said that they felt that. Like I've had, when I've been at cons, a lot of folks come up to me and say, hey, I really didn't read comics until like this book. Now I want to
Oh
read
wow,
other stuff. And I'm like, great, my mission here is complete. Because I just
that's
want more
awesome.
people to read comics. That's all.
Right, right. Well, currently going on, and you've had a hand in the larger creation of this is the Trials of the Amazons
Oh,
crossover.
yes.
And this is kind of the first time Wonder Woman's been given a proper crossover in quite some time. So I was curious, what was the process like for writing the tie-ins? Did you all get together and discuss it? What
Yeah.
was the collaborative process like there?
So we had these wonderful like Zoom meetings, but they were like over Teams, and Teams sucks. But anyway, we had these meetings. And I remember the very first meeting, I was like extremely nervous because, Joel Jones is there, Becky Cloonan, Michael Conrad, Vita, like these folks that have been writing comics and doing stuff for a while. And I'm like, oh, wow, like if I say something, is it gonna be stupid? Like, is someone gonna, or is someone gonna think like, what the hell is she doing here? But everyone was so welcoming. It was really fun to collab because everyone was like really respectful of what everyone else had going on in their books.
Right.
Because again, as me as somebody who likes to like tie things together as much as possible, I was already reading their stuff, even if I didn't have to. I was reading it anyway. So to find little things and bits and pieces to kind of include and then give to them so that they can possibly sprinkle into their books. And then like we had like a Discord, and I remember maybe a week or two into it, Joel had sent something to the Discord asking about art, and what Yara would wear when she went to Olympus. And I think it was like 3 a.m. I was up because sometimes I'm up, and I just thought to myself, like, I'm really about to tell Joelle Jones, like, I really think that she should go with look 2 and 3. It's 3 a.m. How cool is this?
Right. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's well, I wanted to ask, now that you're talking about this idea of getting to work with these writers who've had such an impact on comics. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw the release of the cover for issue 2 of Nubia, Queen of the Amazons, Hawkgirl showing up, and as someone who grew up loving Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, I got very excited. Is the goal going forward now to introduce Nubia to the larger DC universe? What are our plans there?
Our plans is to make it feel like Nubia has been there the whole time. So there's another character that pops up from the Justice League animated shows in Nubia Coronation. I won't give it away,
Ooh.
but yeah, like, so is the idea is really to make it feel like she's been there the whole time, never didn't have it. You just didn't see her because she was, again, down in the basement in Dune's doorway. So the moment I was told that, yeah, you can use some Justice League folks, I was like, excellent. Now, who can I use? And when I was given like the little list, because you have Dark Crisis going on, so being mindful of that.
Everybody's dead; they're never coming back.
Yeah, they're never
dead
coming
forever.
back. I was like, excellent. This just helps the initiative to make it feel like Nubia has been in the DCU this whole time. You just didn't see her because she was busy. She was at work.
Right, of course. You love a convenient plot device like that. Just be like, yeah, don't worry about it.
Yes.
What do you see as the sort of mission statement for you? Obviously, she's been here the whole time, but what is your mission statement for her going forward as you start this next? Is it an ongoing, or is it going to be another mini series for her?
So it's a mini series.
Okay, cool.
As of now, because as I'm learning that nothing is ever truly just definitively just done, right? So it's a mini series right now. I'm actually kind of happy that it is, because you can really focus on this one story arc, and hopefully build out to some other things. But I'm really looking forward to it because we introduce a brand new villain, trying to build out her rogues gallery, because that's important.
Of course.
A brand new character is on the scene, and I'm just really excited for you all to see this, because again, you get more of Nubia's life prior to her coming to the well in this series too.
Sure. Awesome. Very excited. That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to me. I'm so excited to pick up Coronation. So we got Coronation Special, we've got the Pride Anthology, and we've got Nubia, Queen of the Amazons, which starts in July, or is it?
June. So June 7th. Okay.
Awesome.
And also, one more thing about the DC Pride story, there's another character who appeared in Justice League that pops up in that story as well. And if you follow me, you might know who that is, but I'm like, any excuse to write DC characters that I have loved for a very long time, I'm just like, will you let me do it? Great, because I'm going to do it.
Every time I see your cryptic tweets about
you just
getting the chance to write
you
people.
never know.
Although deep down in my heart, I'm always like, this better be the Monica Rambeau ongoing series.
Listen. I have a full pitch ready to go because Marvel has Alien now, and I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. So
Ooh.
I always wonder, and at one time DC had the Alien books, so there's the Batman and the Superman
right.
Books, which I really love, especially the Batman one. But I was like, so what would it look like if Monica Rambeau had to deal with aliens? So that's sitting in the back pocket somewhere. I don't know if any editors from Marvel are listening to this. Please,
don't tease me like that, Stephanie.
Just give me four issues.
On.
Just give me 4 issues. I'll get it done. You won't regret it. So yeah, one day, I'm waiting for Monica.
Marvel, I will buy 10 copies. I'm making that promise right now. I will buy those 1 in 500 variant covers, whatever it takes. I will do it. Well, thank you.
And I did recently, so I think I hope this isn't spoiling or breaking an NDA, but I do have some more stuff from Marvel on the way.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
I can't say what I don't even know how to be cryptic about that without giving it away, but just be on the lookout.
Awesome. I cannot wait to see it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. And
thank you for the invite.
I will sing my praises of Nubia's upcoming adventures, and I look forward to reading them.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.